Welcome everyone to my YouTube channel. I'm Seema Mungia, and today in this video I'm going to talk about a small topic from file handling in Python, that is about relative path and absolute path. In Python, whenever we use any kind of file, whether it is a text file, CSV file, binary file, or any other file at the backend, we can access that file using the path where the file is stored. We can say that the path handling can be done in two ways. One, by mentioning the relative path of the file, and second is the absolute path of the file. So let us talk about the difference between them, advantages and disadvantages, and by the end of this video I will be demonstrating you the application and the use of both the path in your code. Relative path is basically just the name of your file. You don't have to mention the complete path of your file in your code, but you have to ensure that your file at the backend is stored in your default directory or the current working directory. On the contrary, in absolute path, you don't have to worry about what is your working directory or what is your current directory, but in your code, you have to mention the complete path of your file which you are trying to access. Let us take an example. In this relative path, you can see here that my code is containing only the name of the file. I don't have to worry about where this file is stored, because I don't have to worry about writing down the complete path of my file in my code, because by default this file is stored in my default directory of Python. But if we go for the advantage of the relative path, the first advantage is, obviously, let us suppose I'm copying my code from one machine to another machine. My code, I don't have to make any changes into my code. मुझे वहाँ कुछ भी change करने की ज़रूरत नहीं है. But yes, the file at the backend, I have to ensure that it is stored in my default directory. That is one advantage. Another advantage is my code becomes very easier to read and write. I don't have to go worry about the complete path. I don't have to worry about any mistake if I have done while writing down my complete path in my code, because all I need is just writing down the simple file name. The advantage we have listed. Now let us talk about some disadvantage of the relative path. The disadvantage is you have to ensure that your text file or binary file or CSV file, whatever file you are trying to access, must be in the default directory of Python. If it is not in the default directory, then your code will not be able to access that file. Your default directory is always dependent on various things. One of the you can say factor on which your default directory depends is the name of your machine. For example, the name given to my machine is Seema, so obviously my default directory is Seema in my users directory. So for every different machine there will be a different default directory. You have to locate what is your default directory where your code files, Python files, are stored by default. You can always change your default directory, but then you have to go for the settings for that. So you have to ensure that file is always stored in your default directory. Now the another way of writing down the path in your code is your absolute path. Here you can see that I have written the complete path of my file. So this is now the another way of accessing your file in the absolute path. Now I don't have to take stress where my text file is being stored, because I can write down the complete, I'm mentioning my complete path. And also it becomes easier for Python to find out the exact location of my file at the back end. But then again, whatever are the advantages of a relative path, they are the disadvantages to the absolute path. Now, if I'm mentioning the absolute path and I'm copying my or transferring my code from one machine to another machine, I have to ensure that changes are made in my code related to my path. Otherwise, my file will not be located from the backend. And sometimes it happens that my code path becomes very clumsy, so it becomes very difficult to read. Before we further move on to see how we can use the relative path and the absolute path in our code, let us first of all understand what is the default path with the help of a file, a text file I have used. This is my C drive, and if I go for my folder, this is my default directory in my machine where all my Python programs are stored by default. Now, in this folder, I have stored one text file which I will be demonstrating you as an example. That is mystory.txt. So I'm going to use this file in my code, and this is my default directory. Now let us open this file, and you can see here that some content is written here in my text file over here. Now, the same file I have used and with the same name in a different directory also, which is another directory within this folder. You can have any other folder or any other path also. And I have used the same file name over here. But yes, the path, the content of the file is different. Let me open that file and show you this one. Now you can see here the file name of this text file is also mystory.txt, but this file is containing a different content. So now, based upon the relative path and the absolute path, I will be demonstrating you into the code how these two kinds of path works. Obviously, this I am going to use this file. I will be going to open with the help of mentioning the complete path because this is not my default directory. No, I'm using this Spider environment editor for demonstrating my code here. This is a simple code of just reading a text file. So I have mentioned a method over here. The point which we are going to emphasize over here while understanding the concept is the path over here. I'm using this complete path over here. I mentioned the complete path, and I'm just trying to read this file and then print this file. On the top, you can see here that this is my default directory. That means the file which I'm trying to access is not the default directory. That is why I need to mention this complete path over here. Now let us run this code and see the output. You can see here that because I have mentioned the complete path or the absolute path, so the content which is being displayed here is the file which is stored in this particular path over here. But let us suppose I change the path over here, and instead of writing this complete path, I am just mentioning my text file name over here. I am not mentioning any kind of path now. Now, from where my Python is going to pick up this file? My Python will pick up this file from this default path now. Now, if I'm going to run my code, you can see the difference over here that this time the file output is different than the previous one. As I just showed you the two files stored at two different locations. So this is the example very well explaining with how relative path and the absolute path works. For a relative path, you have to just give your file name, and for the absolute path, the complete path name has to be mentioned. Thank you so much. Keep watching my channel.